This video is about the difference between Egypt and Rome to help you understand why I'm right and everyone else is wrong. First of all, Christ is a character in the story, said that he is the way, the truth, and the life. He didn't say that the way must lead to Rome, like a bunch of occultists who say things like, quote unquote, all roads magically lead to Rome. I removed the road magically because I didn't want them to take me out of context. What he was saying was, whatever the truth is the truth. We see in 1 Kings that King Solomon had an Egyptian wife. We see that Jesus hid in Egypt from King Herod, and in Isaiah, the Egyptians are called the people of God. We see that Mount Horeb is called the mountain of God, not just Mount Zion, but Mount Horeb. And the word Hor meaning for Horus. The word Heru is in the word cherubim. Joseph married Asenath, as I pointed out many times, who was the daughter of Potiphar, the high priest of Ra in Egypt. Joseph was elevated by Pharaoh in Egypt. Moses learned the ways of the Egyptians when he was taken into the royal household of Egypt as a child, fished out of the water. His name even means to draw out. Moses took a Cushite wife, and when Miriam said that she disapproves of him, her and I believe someone else, they were cursed with leprosy. The message wasn't a black supremacist message per se, but it was to say, hey, if you want people to be white so much or to be non-Cushite so much, you may as well be all the way white and be a leper, right? But God isn't a racist, but it was symbolic of them choosing the flesh, right? It's a disease that has to do with the flesh over the spirit. The truth in Egypt is greater than the lie in Rome. And if somebody was telling the truth in Rome and they were lying in Egypt, then the truth would be the truth and the lie would be the lie in that scenario as well. In ancient Egypt, they were trying to understand God. We hear countless Egyptologists and scientists and people who are enthusiastic about researching Egyptian history. They come to the conclusion that these temples were places where quite often they practiced martial arts. They studied religion, relative to their temple, and they studied science and so on and so forth. And we're into art and different things. Now keep in mind, not everybody's great at art. And art has many forms. Martial arts, for example. So in Rome was basically a white supremacist place. It's a bit confusing about why that is. Okay, to say Rome wasn't a white supremacist place is like saying that America isn't a white supremacist place. To some degree it's not, but first and foremost it is. I believe it was Julius Caesar who wanted to bring in statues of Egyptian deities into Rome, and he did, and many people think that's why he was killed. I brought this up years ago, like 12, 13 years ago in my videos. It's been a while since I covered this topic. I've been making videos so long that I'm starting to forget some of the stuff I used to talk about. Especially when my brain's being hacked and so on and so forth. But anyway, what you need to understand is that Rome is not a good place in the Bible. It's not. It's part of the story of humanity. It's part of the story of the Bible. These were sex slave masters. These were Colosseum types. These were greedy types. The word Rome is more scrambled. The word Egypt is egg pit scrambled. Egypt had more than one name. They say the name Egypt comes from a word that it means the house of Ptah, who is a deity of artisans and craftsmen. Not a coincidence that Rome and Greece were both big on the craft. Masonry very much is concerned with the Roman and the Greek guilds and artisans and craftsmen of old. Pretty straightforward, right? So when they said, what should we call Egypt? They wanted you to call it two things. They wanted white people to call Egypt for the house of Ptah. a deity of craftsmen, artisans, snakes, what have you. A deity that is very much like a knight. When you compare the statues of knights holding their swords a certain way, and you compare that to Ptah's statue, I've posted this in my videos and on Facebook long ago. And they wanted black people. People in the governing class wanted black people to call Egypt Kemet, not just to compartmentalize people, to cause a racial controversy of a place that was, was founded by black people for the most part, but it was multicultural to a large degree. Okay, if you look at the various, Old Kingdom, First Intermediate Period, Middle Kingdom, Second Intermediate Period, New Kingdom, okay, and it transitions into the Foreign Period where the Greeks and the Romans arrive. You have Cleopatra, Mark Antony, Julius Caesar. That was in the Foreign Period, when the Romans start to take over. And Cleopatra cannot use her feminine powers, if you will, to seduce the Romans anymore, and they just snatch it up the rest of the way and just claim it, and it becomes a very ruthless Roman place. Well, the Greeks also mismanaged it, no doubt. They built, for example, the Temple of Edfu, which, when I first started studying, I was a big fan of that temple because there was, it was a temple of Horus. But the evidence strongly suggests, partly because of how far things are apart, that they neglected the temple of Nekhen, which, as far as anyone knows, is the first kind of major temple of Horus, who is the son of God. Before, Ra was really a central capital deity. Horus was. So around, one story goes that around the 4th dynasty, the priesthood of Ra rises to power, and then Horus becomes the son of Ra. So first, Horus is the son of God. Then he becomes the son of Ra. Then eventually Osiris worship rises, and Horus becomes the son of Osiris. And at some point, Amen, rose, and he became a son of a merger of Amen's son, Khonsu, and Horus, Khan's Hor. And so people had various conceptions of Horus, and one of the first ones is said to be Harwer, Horus the Great One. Horus, when Horus was actually given his credit as the son of God, the idea of the son of God connecting the sun to the falcon, to the hawks, to the sky. Things that are more divine than things here on this earth. And a bunch of gay craftsmen who worship the earth. And they worship the craft of an art, right? Illusion, artisans. And that's the people who basically rose to power in Greece and Rome. Also, you see the history of Set and the settlers, setting the stage, what have you. That was also in Greece and Rome, as Zeus is said to be a storm god as well, like Set and Baal, and said to be a central deity in Rome. So to understand this situation here, when I'm talking about these things, a lot of you probably know all these things already, or lots of these things already. I'm helping you kind of put these things together. Why does this tell us that Hebrew isn't just an Afro-Asiatic language? But there's a reason why in Revelation it says the water stands for the peoples, the nations, the multitudes of languages. Because these languages and ways of doing things tend to go hand to hand. What sounds people make in martial arts and what race made that martial arts are connected, more often than not, at least. I'd imagine every time. What techniques they use, their body, what have you. So what Jesus represents is Horus being crucified in Rome because the deities are against Horus. But they also are pirate deities, right? Baal is a deity of merchants and sailors and storms and lightning, like Zeus, basically, a deity of rape. So these people want to rape and plunder, right? The Roman, row your boat, seaman. Romantic, because they're pirates, because they're Colosseum types, because they're slave traders, because they're immoral. And they built Rome on blood and rape and horrible pagan activities. The wolf is said to be the symbol of the Roman people and connects to Mars, who's often depicted with red eyes. His name is Rams, right? Separating the sheep and the goats. Again, I'm not trying to insult anybody per se. If you look like the statue of any of these people, hey, don't let your looks, don't let the flesh be, take your soul. Do what's right, scramble and obey God through me. They say in the Bible in Romans that when Jesus was crucified, that his flesh was made in the likeness of sinful flesh. They say sinful flesh. Now, on the one hand, you can say all flesh is sinful. True, absolutely. But if the interpretation is correct, it's correct. Could it be that Serapis, the rape cult son of Zeus, a mixture between Dionysus, no doubt the ritual madness of making a false deity and pretending it's the son of God, it's ritual madness, it's religious ecstasy, it's things of Dionysus, it's also science, there's certain science to it, things of Apollo and Zagreus and Zeus and Hera, right, with their gender-neutral cultures, their hermaphroditus. Pan, meaning all, for all the Greco-Roman deities. Zeus's alter ego said to be Hades. What is it symbolic of? It's symbolic of, if you want to go to heaven, get rid of that Greco-Roman bullshit and tell the truth. You think it's an excuse to say, hey, well, I'm not black and these guys are black and, then those guys mulatto. He's talking about black patriarchal lines and so on and so forth. So therefore, we can't tell the truth about this, right? Wrong. Say, crucify your flesh and accept that Christ, when he's come back, is mulatto. But that also goes for black people, mulatto, and everyone else as well. Whoever you think I'm not talking about, it goes for them as well. It goes for my own family. Get over the differences between me and you and do what is right. So in a nutshell, I want you to really take this away from this video, to understand this part. Write it on the tablet of your heart. Put it in your soul. That in Rome, they wanted people to choose a deity or deities that were basically white deities. They were mixed deities, right? Semitic mixed, but they're white. If you would see them, they would look like white people and Jews who look more like white people than other Jews. They look like Greco-Roman Semitic types. They wanted you to choose one of these groups and to come into them and say, hey, that's my group, and the accompanying culture. Where in Egypt, they wanted you to find yourself, and they had the appropriate pinnacle. Their pinnacle was not Zeus or whoever you might think it was in Greece or Rome, Athena or whoever you might think it was. Their pinnacle was the morally precise top martial artist, which is actually the pinnacle. And then a bunch of people in various dynasties and intermediate periods lied about the characteristics of Horus and said, hey, that must be me. People of all races. In God's infinite wisdom, he allowed Libyans to lie, Babylonians, Assyrians, Cushites, you name it. Egyptians themselves, people kept lying. Greeks, Romans, Persians, English people, Coptic Christians, Arabs. They kept saying, it must be me. And they kept lying. So there's liars in Rome, there's liars in Egypt, there's liars all over the world. But the truth is what sets you free. Those of you who accept that your racial imperatives are holding you down, your conditioning is holding you down, and you admit what must be true, what has to be true, 1 + 1 = 2, the top martial artist ever possible is the mulatto person making this video right now. Going the highest path of masculinity and manhood, the moral martyr on his own 10 toes. You should rally and obey God through me. That is the truth. The truth is you can't just say, I believe, and wow, you have to rally and obey God through me. Now ask yourself, what is the truth about why I tell you this? Yes, I'm mad at the masses of people for rebelling against me. But why am I telling you this like this? Hopefully they don't change my voice too much. There's some semblance of bitterness, yeah. I care. Why? Why do I care? Because I believe in God, because I'm on the martyr path, because I have to try my best to do what is right. And God weighs my heart. He doesn't weigh my heart by how many people convert. He weighs my heart. So if you were to rally, I'd have to do you justice. That's where my heart is. And not just do you justice, but from the bottom of my heart, with all of my heart, with all of my being, I'd have to keep the greatest commandment. Like I am right now. That's why I tell you this, because I love God with all my heart. And I reject rebels with all my heart out of love for God. It comes with all my being. Thank you.